We were sleeping at night. It rained and rained. Water gushed into our mud huts. We ran for our lives. We made temporary houses on higher ground nearby, but the water kept rising. We had to escape again. We've never seen rain like that. It was frightening. I have no words to describe it. We had 2 cows, 10 to 15 goats, all drowned. All our belongings went underwater, 7, 8 feet deep. All the crops are gone. Nothing's left.
The prediction from the Met Department came that there would be a normal monsoon this year. The additional rainfall was more than 1,000 times.
It is very difficult for us to reach to all the most vulnerable communities.
The relief efforts have left a lot to be desired. The military was not called in for over 7 days. That to me is a real crime.
Two devastating floods within the space of a year, and Pakistan is reeling. The monsoon season may be over, but for the millions of people who lost their homes, the problems have only just begun. Submerged farms, dead livestock, waterborne diseases. This is one of the worst catastrophes in recent history. The country is desperate for international aid, but help is barely trickling in. I'm Chan Tao Cho. This edition of 101 East explores a tragedy compounded by human error and global politics. We ask, can Pakistan recover? Severe floods in July and August last year submerged 1/5 of Pakistan. 21 million people lost their homes, over 1,000 died. At the time, the United Nations called it the greatest humanitarian crisis in recent history. Just as the poverty-stricken country struggles to get back on its feet, it's been dealt another blow. In the dry and arid southern Sindh province, monsoon seasons usually bring in less than 100 millimeters of rain, but not this year. Over just a few weeks from the end of August, storm clouds dumped more than 1,000 millimeters of rain. 9 million people lost their homes, hundreds died. With parts of the region yet to recover from last year's disaster, this time the destruction is complete.
The difference between both the floods is the last flood was the river flood, therefore both sides of the river bed were affected. But this flood was a rainfall, the huge thunder rainfall that affected not only the rural area but also the urban areas. In terms of relief and rehabilitation, we have not yet been able to cater most of the population as we wanted to. The situation on the ground is not good.
3 days before the downpour, the Pakistan Meteorological Department saw abnormal cloud patterns heading towards the southern Sindh province. The readings defied all earlier long-term rainfall predictions. It suggested an outcome so frightening, no one believed it.
This was a large area and terrain was flat. There was no significant slope from where the water can run away. Those people never received such extreme rainfall event. So they did not believe the predictions.
Chief meteorologist Dr. Ghulam Russell says global warming caused a surge in rainfall.
When there is a rise in temperature, the evaporation from the surface of soil and from the surface of water bodies is accelerated. That uplift creates deficit on the surface, and that is compensated from the flow, moisture flow from Arabian Sea and Bay of Bengal in this region. That continued cycle is responsible for heavy rains this year in Sindh province.
Rain was so heavy that entire regions have been cut off by the flood. We traveled to Tapaka district, 400 kilometers east of Karachi. This area is only accessible by boat. This was once a village of 600 people. Locals say 23 bodies were pulled out of the water who are traveling across. It's the only way to reach a community seeking refuge in a desert. Flood victims camp as far as the eye can see in this part of the Thar Desert. More than 15,000 families have converged near the historical Naucourt Fort, built some 200 years ago. Most of them Hindu minority farmers who worked for feudal landlords until the flood washed them here. Government aid workers provided basic tents, but there were not enough to go around. Hello, namaste. How are you? We meet Prem Chand, who had to make his own shelter.
When we first got here, some officials gave us rice. There was so little, we didn't know whether to eat it or to give it to the children. After a month, they sent rations every 10 to 15 days. 10 kilograms of flour each time. To make it last, sometimes we ate, sometimes we starved. 10 days ago, they said go home because there will be no more rations. But where can we go?
Like many here, Prem Chand is in debt. His landlord demands the equivalent of $900 for the 3 acres of farm he leased.
The landlords are asking for $300 an acre. We have no money to buy medicine for the kids, let alone pay them. It's not our fault that the crops are destroyed. We gather at night and reminisce. The women sing. It gives us relief for a while. We really wish our lives will improve so we can stand on our feet again. We need the government to give us a place to live. There's no choice when winter comes. Whoever survives the cold will live. We have no tents, no warm clothes. There are many snakes and bugs, and we sleep on the ground.
Some victims are leaving the desert. This family has traveled 3 days from the nearby town of Miti, where they sought refuge on sand dunes for 2 months. It takes another 3 days to reach home, a stop-start journey as they keep up with a truck borrowed from their landlord when they escaped the flood. It contains everything the 22 family members managed to salvage.
We were left with nothing to eat. The crops were destroyed. The cattle drowned. We had to leave because every day we were drinking dirty water. Even though we are still drinking dirty water, we are okay thanks to God's grace. My family members had fever, but we were given medicine in Miti, so we are fine now. We are going back because we have no relatives or friends in Miti to help us find jobs, food and water. Back home, we are friends. Hopefully someone will help us.
200 kilometers west of the desert, Badin district suffered the worst floods. The water surrounding the village of Malkani Sharif has yet to subside. Locals say relief workers forgot about them for months before the army arrived today with aid. After staying on nearby roads, families are slowly making their way back home. But the submerged areas hide treacherous potholes, as we find out for ourselves.
Get back up, mate.
Inside the village, on higher ground, a family mourns the loss of a 30-year-old man who drowned 3 days before we arrived. Assalamu alaikum. We meet his mother in a hut nearby. She says drainage is poor here with recurring floods, but it's never been this bad.
She said, I'm very sad that my son drowned in this water, and this floods, this kind of situation we face every year, and so many children we have lost in this flood.
And for those who survive, staying healthy can be difficult.
There's only one pharmacy in this area, and there are 14,000 people living here. The floods cause widespread diarrhea, cholera and malaria, but the doctors have left. It's hard to get medicine. We're cut off by the submerged roads.
Across the province, the health of livestock is also at stake. The flood has killed more than 14,000 farm animals. Farmer Usman Samejo is in despair over his cattle. 3 of his cows died from waterborne diseases after the flood destroyed his crops. If he doesn't sell the rest, his family will starve. He says each cow is worth $800, but he'll let them go for $100.
We have many sick animals and we're helpless. The floodwater is like poison. The government gave us bank cards to withdraw aid money. But every time we go to the bank, there is no cash. All the villagers have the same problems. We have no money to treat the sick livestock, so they just die.
The government has credited $120 in each flood victim's bank account. Every day in the city of Badin, there is a scrum to withdraw the money at teller machines. Many of the people are frustrated. They've either been issued a bank card that doesn't seem to work, or they don't know how to use it. They claim policemen are demanding $6 to help them.
These policemen say they can help us withdraw money for the cards that work, but we have to give them a commission. We can't afford it. This money is very important. We need clothes, food, shelter. The government isn't supplying us, so we need to buy them. I got this card after so much difficulty, but to withdraw the money is even more difficult.
Why are you asking for money to help the people? Worried the commotion might cause even more delay, these women tell us there is no trouble and we should move along.
We don't have problem with the bank staff.
There is a lot of corruption going on in the Pakistan's administrative system. So they show on the papers the bridge has been built. Practically it hasn't. They show on the paper that the houses have been, we distributed this number into 1,000, but maybe actually on 100, and there is photo catching that, okay, 100.
I admit that some of our people are not so professional in delivering policing services. But we can't generalize that kind of attitude, that the whole system is corrupt. That much of failing is there in the society. But by and large, managing supply chain for 9 million people on everyday basis is not a simple thing.
The Pakistani government is under heavy criticism for its relief efforts. Javed Iqbal of local NGO Jago says the delay in asking for international aid was costly. After the monsoon hit, Jago had to wait 1.5 months before they were allowed access to affected areas.
We used what little resources we had for relief efforts. When we asked for help from international NGOs, they said they couldn't because Pakistan hadn't made a formal appeal. The government thought it could manage. They are afraid that if the state allowed NGOs to provide basic services, people would wonder who to vote for.
On the day one, it wasn't that big a disaster. I mean, it was 3 days rain and that was break for 2 to 3 weeks. 3 days rain, you don't need international support. Until there was a second spell, it was very heavy spell, it was very long spell. Then we had to go for international support.
After last year's flood, international help came pouring into Pakistan. But this time, the response has been muted. Western aid agencies are appealing for about $360 million, but have only secured a quarter of the funds.
There are also a lot of other disasters happening around the world at the moment, which are also competing for these donors.
My name is Sheila Kijawari.
The media are not focusing on Pakistan because talking about Pakistan and floods is kind of, in a way, old news. They already did a big coverage last year, so this year they are paying less attention.
The lack of funds and scale of destruction leaves the state and aid agencies unable to reach many vulnerable communities. But one local organization is winning hearts and minds with the quality of their relief efforts, Jamaat-ud-Dawa. Spending tens of thousands of dollars, they moved fast during the early stages of disaster. With their subgroup FIF, or Falahi Insaniyat Foundation, they set up tent villages in flood-affected areas to care for some 85,000 victims. But this is not a long-term solution, they say. You went into labor when you were... Yasmin Haider is one of 5 women here who gave birth after they were rescued.
Our house was drowned in the flood. We left everything behind in the middle of the night. I was afraid because I was pregnant and in pain. I didn't know what condition my child would be born in. But life goes on. They treated me well here and delivery was smooth. Winter is coming. I hope we'll be given blankets, beds and better tents to protect us from the cold and warm clothes as well.
The women lack calcium. Facilities that pregnant women need are almost non-existent. Some women had stomach problems from drinking unclean water, so the babies they gave birth to are extremely weak.
But there is another side to Jamaat-ud-Dawa. The United Nations believes it is a front for Islamic militant group Lashkar-e-Taiba and responsible for the 2008 Mumbai attacks. Some of its members are wanted internationally. We meet their leader, Hafiz Saeed. He was held in house arrest following the attacks, but the High Court cleared him. Pakistan allows Jamaat-ud-Dawa to operate as an NGO, but this fuels the perception that the country is a haven for Islamic extremists, another reason why foreign aid has been slow.
The West and India use propaganda against Islam. They consider it extremist. So if they can create this mischievous propaganda against Islam, the Quran and the Prophet, it's easy for them to target us. We don't differentiate. We are helping Muslims, Hindus and Christians. The state should be taking care of these problems. But the government has its own problems, political infighting. Pakistan also faces a lot of international pressure, so the government hasn't achieved much with its relief efforts.
Maybe internationally, Jamaat-ud-Dawa is perceived as a terrorist organization, but domestically, their performance is far better than the non-governmental organizations which have been supported by the foreign governments. Their performance is far better than the common, you can say, our local administrative functionaries.
And as donations slow to a trickle, The International Federation of Red Cross and Red Crescent Societies wants donors to focus on the victims.
So we should forget about politics, but we have to think that these people are desperate, they are really affected, and they have nothing to do with the whatever politics of the government.
The government says it has carried out most of the rescue and relief work so far. It includes 5 camps the army set up for flood refugees, each one caring for more than 6,000 people. But critics say recovery efforts, including for last year's flood, have been so slow that international donors can't trust the government. Authorities reject the accusation.
The donors do not provide funds to the government directly. They fund UN agencies, but adequate work was not done. It's not falling on the part of the government. It is slow performance, lack of performance on the part of agencies who received funds from the donors.
It wouldn't be the first instance of international aid being seen as a double-edged sword. This canal, called the Left Bank Outfall Drain, or LBOD, runs through the Sindh province. Partly financed by the World Bank and other international lenders, design flaws caused many floods since its completion in 2002. It's a canal that gives and takes lives. On one hand, it provides drainage for nearly 500,000 hectares of crop cultivation on land that used to be waterlogged. On the other hand, it has dramatically changed the natural water flow patterns in other parts of the province, causing the flood situation to turn from bad to worse. So with this year's heavy rainfall, the affected areas didn't stand a chance. I guess, yeah, that's one thing. Opposition Member of Parliament Shahid Khakan Abbasi explains.
What we were doing was removing stormwater from the northern parts of Sindh and releasing it in the southern parts. There have been several floods, and they've actually washed away most of the embankments on the lower part in Sindh. And that creates, as a result, in more salinity and waterlogging and the seawater backing up. Unfortunately, the people of southern Sindh are the losers as far as LBOD is concerned.
Pakistan is an agricultural country. The depth of destruction means loss of livelihood. In Badin, the worst hit district, 3/4 of cultivated land have been wiped out.
There are tomato, chilies, paddy and sugarcane, also cotton crops. All are damaged, and the million and billion rupees were lost. Our economy was come down at a zero level. We are looking to our friends in Almighty Allah that He will support us.
The textile industry, backbone of Pakistan's economy, can certainly do with divine intervention. The flood washed out more than 2 million bales of cotton crops in the Sindh province, a key cotton-producing region.
The cotton was on flower when the rain or flood comes. This time we lost everything. All roads become bumpy, and 2 hours running has become 5 hours transportation timing. Our export is very low just because of quality of cotton, and the quantity is also obviously there.
Casting forward, the meteorological department is wary about the continued effects of global warming.
We must be prepared to deal with such catastrophes in future with a larger intensity and heavy magnitudes.
That means it could get even worse.
Not only in Pakistan, in all parts of the world.
Human error and global politics have compounded Pakistan's natural disaster. Recovery efforts need to step up fast because it seems nature will not wait.